before you this afternoon, and thank you for your thoughtful work for many years related to strengthening America's capabilities in the Arctic. I actually really appreciate the title of this hearing, as there is a cost to doing nothing, and there's also a cost for taking action. I thought, since my written testimony is already placed into record, that I would just provide a few moments of reflection on Secretary Pompeo's, I think, groundbreaking speech on Monday in Finland, and then to just offer some ideas for your consideration. Although Secretary Pompeo's speech against the backdrop of the Arctic Council was perhaps a misplaced moment, because the Arctic Council does not deal with hard security, nor does it really deal with economic issues. I think it's an important moment that a senior U.S. government official has now stated that we are in a new age of strategic engagement in the Arctic. This is not new news to this committee, but I think it is new that it's been articulated. But as I note in my written testimony, we fall again into a trap of our own making by describing what our competitors are doing, and that in some way substitutes for what we are not doing. So we can talk about Russia's 41 icebreakers, but we need 6. We can talk about the 16 deepwater ports that perhaps Russia may have, but we just need 1. We need to have more flexible, capable forces and assets that can operate in ice-covered waters and can fight in cold weather. So my suggestion, and it came to me as I was listening to the testimony, is, quite frankly, we do need an operational plan. I would argue along the lines, and I closely follow U.S. force posture in Europe and NATO, we need something akin to the European, it was first called the Reassurance Initiative, it went to the European Deterrence Initiative, and now it's the European Defense Initiative. What happened? U.S. had withdrawn forces from Europe, and then the annexation of Crimea and the incursion into the Donbass occurred, and all of a sudden we had to get very focused and have a dedicated spending on air, land, and maritime component to make our forces more robust. I would argue we need an Arctic sovereignty initiative. It needs to work both with the Coast Guard and with the Navy. It needs to be multi-year and dedicated. We have to take the urgency of great power competition in the Arctic and move forward with actual spending. What I've heard is lots of conversation about what we should do. We have to put the imperative of what we will do. And again, it's not about what our competitors are doing. It is about what the U.S. must do to protect its security interests in the Arctic. Again, just 3 more brief reflections on Secretary Pompeo's speech. He noted that respect and transparency are the price of admission in the Arctic. Well, I would probably rephrase that, and I would say that it's respect for international law and norms, which is the price for stability, security, environmental protection, and prosperity in the Arctic. So right now, everyone is respecting international law, but we don't have transparency. We have a lack of transparency of why Russia is constructing very sophisticated air bases with surface-to-air missiles and developing new and exercising new Arctic-specific equipment. We don't have transparency on what China is doing in their observation centers or in their infrastructure development. Norms, an Arctic code of conduct, and greater confidence-building measures are needed. Secretary Pompeo also alerted us to the differences in the maritime legal interpretations of the Northwest Passage and the Northern Sea Route. This is important, but lumping Canada and Russia into the same bucket, I think, is incorrect. We have an ally and a NATO partner that we share protection of North America and NORAD. We have a difference of opinion. We manage that opinion. Russia's difference of opinion is a slightly different issue. But again, we have to look at this in context. The reason that we don't have a major issue right now with that legal interpretation is because the traffic has been so minimal in the Northern Sea Route. In 2018, there were 27 full transits through the Northern Sea Route. We haven't really raised this issue, quite frankly, because it hasn't been used that much. And I suspect that the Northern Sea Route is not the primary interest for the Chinese. It is the transpolar or central passage that is of importance to them. I don't believe they're going to pay those port fees in the future. So one closing comment that I have, and that's our work at the Arctic Council. The U.S. position on the Arctic Council and the declaration, unfortunately, had the unique result of having Russia and China sound more like environmental advocates and working more harmoniously with our own allies than the U.S. We have to effectively use these vehicles, whether it's the International Maritime Organization or the Arctic Council, to shape the influence we want. When the U.S. walks away from these institutions, we cede influence and power to our competitors. We have to stop kicking our own goals and get busy working on developing America's capabilities in the Arctic. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Conley. Dr. Kingstead. Am I
Chairman
saying your
Maloney.
name? Am I saying your name